Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. What I'm about to tell you is going to make you sick to your stomach. And honestly, it should do. Because while we were all cheering, buying action figures, and wearing Hulk Hogan t-shirts, there were kids' actual children being destroyed behind those curtains. And the people who could have stopped it, they looked the other way. They chose money over morality. They chose silence over safety. Quick question before we dive deeper. Where are you right now? What city? What country? Comment below, because I guarantee you, no matter where you're watching from, your country has its own version of this story. Powerful people protecting predators. It happens everywhere. But today, we're exposing what happened in wrestling. It's 1985. Imagine being 13 years old. You live and breathe wrestling. Your walls are covered with posters of Randy Savage and Ultimate Warrior. You know every finishing move, every catchphrase. And someone offers you a job, not just any job, but working for the WWF, setting up rings, traveling with the crew, being backstage at Madison Square Garden. For a kid like Tom Cole, this wasn't just a job. This was validation. This was belonging to something bigger than his small town life. Tom's first day, he meets Mel Phillips, mid-40s, ring crew chief, been with the company for years. Everyone knows Mel. He's the guy who tells you where to be, when to travel, which hotels you're staying at. He controls everything about your life on the road. And Tom's just happy to be there. He's eager to please. He wants to prove he belongs. That eagerness, that desperation to fit in predators, can smell it from a mile away. The abuse didn't start with violence. It never does it? First, it has weird comments that make you uncomfortable, but you laugh along because you do want to seem uncool. Then it's touches that last too long, hands that wander where they shouldn't. Then it's Phillips cornering Tom in hotel rooms, in empty arenas after everyone's gone home. A 13-year-old kid, hundreds of miles from his parents, being violated by a man in his 40s. And who could Tom tell? Phillips was his boss. Phillips controlled whether he kept this dream job or got sent home in disgrace. Here's what absolutely destroys me about this stone wasn't special to Phillips. He wasn't the only one. There were other boys. How many? We'll probably never know the full number because most of them never came forward. Some couldn't face reliving it. Others were terrified of being called liars. And some probably do UNT even recognize what happened to them as abuse because they were groomed so thoroughly they thought it was normal. That's how insidious this was. The abuse continued for years. Not weeks, not months. Years. Throughout the late 80s, Mel Phillips had access to vulnerable teenagers, and according to multiple accounts, he exploited that access repeatedly. Other crew members saw things, they heard things, they suspected things. But wrestling has this code, right? You don't snitch. You handle things internally. You protect the business, except protecting the business meant sacrificing children. Let that sink in. Then 1992 hits like a bomb. Barry Ortuña, Randy Ortuni's uncle, goes on national television and says what everyone backstage already knew, but nobody wanted to admit. He tells Geraldo Rivera's show that there's sexual abuse happening in the WWF, that Mel Phillips is a predator, that young boys are being victimized. And suddenly, the wrestling world can't ignore it anymore. The media is circling like sharks. Sponsors are panicking. And Tom finally has permission to speak his truth. When Tom comes forward, he's not looking for fame. He's looking for anyone to acknowledge what was done to him, to say, we believe you, and it was wrong. But here's the gut punch. The WWF fires Phillips in 1988 after initial complaints surface. Seems responsible, right? Except they quietly rehire him in 1991. They brought him back. They gave him access to kids again. How do you explain that away? How do you claim you didn't know when you literally fired him for this exact reason? And it gets worse. At the same time, Terry Garvin at WWF, executive gets accused by multiple young men of sexual harassment and demanding sexual favors for career opportunities. So now we've got two different predators operating in the same company around the same time. That's not coincidence. That's culture. That's an environment where this behavior was tolerated, maybe even enabled, because firing and rehiring someone like Phillips sends a crystal clear message. We don't actually care. Vince McMahon claims he knew nothing. Zero knowledge. He portrays himself as a CEO so focused on the business that he could unpossibly have known what was happening with his ring crew. But let's be real, here McMahon micromanages everything in his company. He approves storylines, hires, fires, travel schedules. We're supposed to believe that multiple complaints about sexual abuse somehow never reached his desk, that nobody in his inner circle mentioned it. Come on, the 90s roll around. McMahon gets indicted on story charges, a different scandal, same pattern of alleged cover-ups, he's acquitted. The media loses interest in wrestling's dark side. The Ring Boy scandal becomes this whispered story that hardcore fans know about but casual viewers never hear. Tom Cole tries to rebuild his life, but how do you rebuild from that? The nightmares don't stop because the news cycle moved on. The trauma doesn't heal because people got bored with the story. For almost 30 years, Tom lives with this. He sees WWE become $1 billion on people. He watches McMahon become a literal billionaire. He sees wrestling go mainstream, get inducted into halls of fame, partner with major corporations, and through it all, he's carrying the weight of what was done to him as a child. Nobody's been held accountable. Nobody's been punished. The man who abused him died without ever facing real consequences. That's not justice. That's not even close. Then 2022 changes everything. Maryland passes the Child Victims Act. Suddenly, the statute of limitations doesn't protect abusers anymore. Tom, now in his 50s, has a choice. He can stay silent, protect his privacy, avoid the inevitable attacks on his credibility, or he can fight. He can force WWE to answer questions they've dodged for 3 decades. Tom chooses to fight. He files a lawsuit against WWE, against Vince McMahon, against Linda McMahon, against Mel Phillips' estate. The lawsuit doesn't hold back. It alleges WWE knowingly employed a predator, that they received complaints and did nothing, that they prioritized the public image over child safety, that they created an environment where abuse could flourish because nobody was watching. Nobody was protecting these kids. WWE's response? Basically prove it. They deny everything. They claim these are baseless accusations from decades ago. They hide behind lawyers and PR statements. But here's what WWE can't deny. They fired Phillips in 1988 for inappropriate conduct with minors, then rehired him. That's documented. They also can't deny that Terry Garvin faced multiple accusations around the same time. They can't deny that Tom Cole has been telling the same story consistently for over 30 years. They can't deny that other ring boys have corroborated these accounts. So what are we left with? Either multiple men are lying about being abused as children for no apparent benefit, or WWE failed these kids catastrophically. I want you to think about something right now, wherever you're watching this from Sao Paulo, London, Tokyo, New York, Mumbai. There's probably some institution in your city doing the exact same thing, protecting predators because exposing them would be expensive or embarrassing. Catholic Church did it. Penn State did it. USA Gymnastics did it. The Boy Scouts did it. It's the same playbook every time. Deny, discredit the victims, claim ignorance. Settle quietly if you have to, and hope people forget. Tom Cole refuses to let us forget. At 51 years old, he's reliving his worst trauma in court documents and depositions. He's opening himself up to attacks from wrestling fans who think he's lying for money. He's risking his privacy, his mental health, his peace. Why? Because he needs the world to know what WWE did. Because he needs other survivors to know they're not alone. Because he needs to look himself in the mirror and know he didn't stay silent when it mattered most. So I'll ask you one more time, where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments. Because when you do that, you're not just answering a question. You're saying, I witnessed this story. I've heard these survivors. I'm not looking away. That matters. In a world that wants us to forget, to move on, to stop bringing up uncomfortable truths. Remembering is an act of resistance. Believing survivors is an act of defiance. The Ring Boy scandal isn't some closed chapter. It's ongoing. As I'm recording this, the lawsuit continues. More information might surface, more victims might find courage to speak, or WWE might settle quietly, bury this again under mountains of money and non-disclosure agreements. But Tom Cole's voice is already out there. His truth is already told. and no amount of corporate PR can erase what he survived or the courage it took to fight back. This is the story they didn't want you to know. This is the darkness behind the spectacle, and this is why we have to keep telling it.